Hey everybody, welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave for our White Lotus Season 3 episode review. My name is Bina 007. I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by Stephanie
Hello, Steph for GSDG on the forum or Discord.
and by Cal Wadegi.
Hello, Michael or Kalwadegi on Discord.
And as a warner, we will be spoiling Season 3 of White Lotus. We might spoil prior seasons, particular Season 2 as well. So if you haven't watched, do not proceed. Okay, folks, let's start off with a rating of the season. Maybe also a comment on how you found the finale and how you feel it stacked up against prior seasons. Michael, let's start with you.
I think it was well done in terms of the character writing and the performances, but in terms of the story, it really felt like a letdown compared to previous seasons. Definitely felt like the slowest and the one that was just. There was a glut of too much going on, too many characters, and not enough story progression, which I think is a bit unfortunate.
How many lemon cakes would you give it?
Give it 3.5 out of 5 poisoned pina coladas.
Do you like pina coladas and walking in the rain? I am exactly aligned with you, Michael. I found it very slow, and if I hadn't seen prior seasons and loved them, I probably would have given up halfway through in this environment of too much TV. I did actually find the finale satisfying, but I felt it was a very slow burn. And I kind of further resent the showrunner, Mike White, for sort of criticizing the audience for not having the patience with it. I'm just like, stop being angry with me that I didn't like your show. But yeah, it probably for me it's maybe lower, maybe a 2.5 for the season and a 3.5 for the finale. Whereas season 2, I would have been 5 stars all the way. Steph, how about you?
I think I'm going to the middle path here, very apropos, but 3 bottles of lorazepam out of 5. Uh, yeah, I binge watched it leading up to the finale, so I still had some problems with the pacing. And although I can imagine how frustrated people might have felt as a weekly watch, but yeah, I agree with the consensus that it was a satisfying finale for an unsatisfying season. And it was a letdown coming off of season 2.
Okay, so it sounds like we're fairly aligned. I think how we're going to take it, or how I propose taking it, let me know if you disagree, is maybe by sort of friend or family group and storyline by storyline, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Um,
I
and
agree.
let's start with I think the central storyline. Maybe people will disagree. The Ratcliffe family. So we have Timothy, the dad, who famously, notoriously now went to Duke University, the self-styled Harvard of the South, and is played by Jason Isaacs, known to many as Papa Malfoy from the Harry Potter movies. And he's vacationing with his wife Victoria, played by Parker Posey, superb, Lorazepam. So they're very, very rich. She spends her whole time sort of, well, trying to be on drugs, but Timothy Radcliffe finds out that he has actually been done for, I think, insider trading or something similar, some kind of financial shenanigans. His assets are frozen. When he returns from this holiday, he's going to be embarrassed. He's going to be broke. And he spends the whole vacation trying to figure out what to do with this information. Will his family cope without wealth and without glamour? Will he cope? Should he commit suicide? Should he kill them all with poisoned pina coladas? And he has 3 kids. Saxon, the eldest boy, who's a kind of dude bro, toxic masculine, always talking about sex, but probably doesn't get much, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger. He's got a daughter, Piper, who wants to become a monk of some kind, and the whole reason for the holiday is a bit of a ruse. And he's got a younger son played by Sam Nivola. So actually, both of the sons are played by Nepo babies because Sam Nivola is the daughter of Emily Mortimer and Alessandro Nivola, called Lachlan. And Lachlan, I don't know, interesting character, right? And we can get into some incest adjacent stuff. But maybe let's start with the parents. So, or the family in general. How did you find these characters? How did you find the storylines? Did they successfully resolve? There's a lot there, isn't there? Maybe start with the parents, I guess, with the dad in particular.
Yeah, first, Jason Isaacs is a Brit, but he totally nailed that accent. And he didn't just do a generic Southern accent, he did more of like a North Carolina accent. It's like not every Southern accent is the same. If you listen to like Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and George W. Bush talk, they all have different accents. So completely nailed it. As far as Parker Posey, I have a Southern auntie just like that, so I believe. I love her.
Because I think a lot of people thought she was caricaturing it, and maybe because she comes to it with a reputation of being a comic actress. So it's great to hear you say it's authentic. And I spent a lot of my time watching Southern Charm, which is based in Charleston. And apparently, Jason Isaacs based his accent off corrupt politician Thomas Ravenel. So apparently, it worked. I'm so pleased to hear that.
I was
I
just going
hadn't
to
seen
say
her in
she was
anything else.
definitely the scene stealer of this season.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
hadn't
people
seen.
said she was the Jennifer Coolidge, like, or she was meant to be the Jennifer Coolidge of this season.
Yeah, I hadn't seen her in. I've never seen her in anything else, but I did see a photo of her from Dazed and Confused, and she does look just like the daughter. So A+ casting there for the daughter.
Yeah, I mean, she's just phenomenally hilarious in anything she's in. But I think what's interesting about her character is I think we're meant to think of her as just very superficial, very driven by wealth and status. But she knows exactly how to play her daughter when she says, maybe just go spend a night with these monks. And she has the right instinct, which is let's check this isn't a cult. Let's check she's not going to get exploited. So I actually think there's some brains behind that woman, right? I mean, she
Right.
in her own small world and universe that she's chosen to circumscribe, she knows what she's up to.
She reminds me of Daphne from season 2, who is a character
Yeah.
you initially think is just a bimbo or brainless, but yes, as you say, she understands her family, her dynamic. I guess she understands everyone but the husband and father, Tim, who is going through a lorazepam binge throughout the season. But I can understand that in that no one expects him to be having a massive freak out because he's never done something like that before.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
actually, I'm
yeah, you definitely buy that he's just like prior to whatever shady deal he did in 2008 with his protege. He is just like goes about his life as a Boy Scout. So this is
a huge shock. And you get the
yeah,
feeling that he's not the typical sort of super corrupt Wall Street guy from the films. Like he's not serially and utterly unethical, that he just tried to do his pal a favor and now is getting in trouble, right? So I think yes, he's done something criminal and we must condemn him for that. But I don't get the feeling he's like a serially corrupt person. Yeah, anyway, that's just my take. Maybe I'm being too soft on him because I love Jason Isaacs. Do you think his wife will stay with him once she figures it out? Or do you think she's just going to divorce him in three, two, one go?
I assume they're going to stay together, even if it's going to be difficult. I feel like they're just welded together as a unit. Actually, that's one
Mm,
of my primary disappointments is that we didn't see any of the reaction, which sort of felt like it was being hinted at towards up until the finale.
yes.
So I would have liked to have seen at least one or two scenes, particularly of Parker Posey just going, "Oh no."
But there is a heroic shot of him looking, into the distance to the sea. We're going to get through this as a family, and you just sort of think, I don't think that's how the world of White Lotus works, Timothy.
yeah.
Anything
I
else
mean,
to?
I was.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was actually kind of expecting that something would happen with the protege character who off screen with who cut a deal with the feds while he was on vacation, and like that because like he was talking about over the phone how he's going to take his own life, how he was like in total freak out before he cut that deal,
Yeah.
and that this would end or that it would end up kind of being a bit of a Shaggy Dog story where he just gets out of it with no consequences and he doesn't have to tell his wife.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, wouldn't it be ironic if he kills the entire family and then the police turn on the phones and then there are lots of messages saying, "Don't worry, you've been found innocent. There's nothing to worry about." That's how I thought it would end.
Right. And or yeah, that it's that would feel more apropos for a black comedy like the White Lotus, but yeah.
I feel like that's how White Lotus season two would have ended, whereas season three seems more like a straightforward drama in some respects and going more at tragedy, like straight tragedy than comic tragedy comedy.
Yeah.
And I think, part of the reason why I think he's not an terribly terrible guy is like part of the reason he doesn't shoot himself with Chekhov's gun is because he imagines how his wife would react. And I mean, he can't bring himself to kill his kids. I think fundamentally he's a decent guy at heart, but his life has
There's
taken a bad turn.
there's no malicious energy coming from him, and you can even see this in his son of Saxon, who, despite being a douchey dude bro, is not as it's that character is also not taken to the extreme that it could be taken to. We see
Yeah.
vulnerability from him.
He's actually incredibly vulnerable and insecure in some ways. And I think that a lot of it's just posturing because he thinks that's what people like his dad, Wall Street bros, do. And he even says to his dad in an absolutely heartbreaking speech, like, I have no identity other than you. But he's the one of all of them who kind of picks up that everything's not okay with his dad, right? I mean, for such a dude bro, he's the one who actually shows a bit of sensitivity, maybe after the shock of that incestuous sex scene.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think he's probably a decent guy. He also just looks so much like his dad. I got a kick out of that. Yeah, let's get into that. Let's get into Saxon and Lachlan. How do you find those characters?
I felt the younger two siblings were rather undercooked, which was surprising considering
Mm.
they were having the whole dynamic of the youngest brother being pulled between the two older siblings and the sister being the character that's interested in Buddhism.
Mm.
Yeah, it felt
I
like
see.
too overly ambitious, and Saxon's really the only one who has a complete arc. I think Lachlan, going straight to the end, Lachlan's almost death scene doesn't really do much to resolve his character trajectory, and I just feel like there's not enough that we know about him. Like, was it was it gay incestual desire for his brother, or was he just a real big people pleaser? That's
I
what I
know.
need to know.
I think it's the former and the latter's just an excuse. But you're right, there's not enough in it to actually know. I think I saw God. I mean, I wanted him to die because I felt it would be very White Lotus for the innocent little boy to die. But yeah, let's see what happens to him in the future.
Yeah, I think
Except that he won't.
yeah, and also just like the way he answered his dad when Jason Isaacs asked him if he could live without money did his since he was the only one who said, yeah, I think I could, was that just a people pleasing response, or because his whole fate at the end is kind of a symbolic middle path, that he can go further in the debauchery than his brother, and that he
Mm,
can go further in the asceticism than his sister. But then
mm.
he's the only one who kind of just like without even trying has this grand spiritual experience.
Yeah, because he's just a nothing, so he can go either way, right? He can just move with the
Yeah,
tide in a way.
but that said, I still agree with Michael that it was rather undercooked, and as a result that whole symbolism didn't feel as satisfying as it could have felt.
I mean, but then if he's undercooked, I think his sister Piper is even more undercooked, as all we know about her is that she's a virgin who maybe wants to be a monk. And apparently there was a plot line where she was going to decide near the end of the holiday to lose her virginity and was going to sleep with Belinda's son when he showed up, Mr. MBA bro. And that was just cut for time reasons, which I'm really pleased about. But I just felt that there was not much there in that character in particular.
She almost feels like
Yeah,
a plot device.
Mm.
yeah, and it feels like that's such a missed opportunity, because like you could go into a whole stuff about like Western misconceptions about Buddhism, and just like maybe because she's a young woman, maybe it would be, or maybe it was actually good for them to not make this like a social media thing about like like she was inspired to go on this trip through like like videos people made about their gap year on a year-long meditation retreat in Thailand. But it did feel like that was, or that there was a lot missing from her motivations. And
Yeah, and that's really what I thought this season would be about, because I felt White Lotus season two was quite good at showing the interplay between the wealthy interlopers and the tourists, and in particular that sort of heritage tourism from America trying to find Sicilian roots and The Godfather, and these actual Sicilians don't want those people around them.
right.
And I felt there was going to be more of that commentary here, which would have been really interesting, especially with the sex industry in Thailand. But there was nothing, right? They don't. It was just so superficial. And I think some people have accused Mike White of being as superficial in that location as the tourists he satirizes. There's also something to be said about this is the largest cast they've had on a White Lotus, and maybe it was just so overstuffed. They needed a couple more episodes or just fewer characters. I don't know.
More focus per episode on a few characters than just jumping between each plot line and advancing nowhere. It had the Game of Thrones season 2 problem
Yes.
where
Yes.
they really just couldn't, yeah, not enough focus.
Right, because
I
in
agree.
2 of White Lotus, there were some episodes where they didn't focus on some of the characters, but it
Yeah.
still felt satisfying
Mm.
for each
And
little plot line.
agree. Anything else to say on the Ratcliffes or the Ratcliffes even? Okay. So let us then turn our attention to a trio of travelers. So we have Jacqueline Lemon, who is a successful TV actress in Hollywood, played by Michelle Monaghan, who always seems to play the good girl next door type. So kind of interesting seeing her play a rather self-involved, narcissistic, oh, let me buy you all this like amazingly expensive holiday, but really I'm very much in charge and the queen bee. And she's on holiday with Kate, who is played by Leslie Bibb, who in real life is Sam Rockwell's actual partner. Interesting. Who is a sort of country club wife from Austin, Texas. And originally, when this was written, it was more explicit that she was a Trump voter, but they kind of toned it down. And then Carrie Coon from Broadway and The Gilded Age plays Laurie, the third wheel in this relationship. She's a corporate lawyer. She's a divorcee. She's the one who's meant to be a bit of a mess and not quite as together as the other two. And so they're this kind of slightly toxic threesome. Where is it? Are they frenemies rather than friends? And apparently, in the original script, there was a plot point where Laurie has a daughter who is trans, and she's talking about trying to navigate this. And therefore, having a friend who voted Trump is more problematic for her. But that was cut as soon as Trump was elected. Read into that what you will. So, how do we find these three, my friends?
This trio did kind of feel undercooked, and when you mentioned that, it's that would. I'm trying to decide whether that would feel point or that or like considering the level of depth that we got, if that would feel just adding controversy to substitute for substance. But
I believe I read somewhere that line was taken out because it would be by itself undercooked, and it would just be, oh, I have a trans daughter, son, whatever, and never going to hear it again.
right.
And maybe exploitative, right, to raise such an important issue and not then treat it fully. So maybe it's a good thing and good motives. Yeah.
But in any case, this trio does symbolize what's called the 3 poisons in Buddhism. So greed, hatred, and ignorance.
Ah, I did not know this.
So yeah, so the Texas wife is I want to say like ignorance. The TV star is greed. So I guess that leaves Lori as hatred, but like she is rather like the one who's kind of like looking for reasons to be upset with Jacqueline with sleeping with Valentine, whether or not that's justified, right? But but she was she did seem to be holding a bit of a grudge for a long time against Jacqueline. So
did you all buy that the Carrie Coon character by the end, Laurie would just sort of be like, I'm just so grateful to be at the table after all the venting and all the spleen? Is it realistic that they just all stay friends, or is that the nature of those sorts of friendships, that you can have these little blow-ups, but everyone's going to be kind of tacitly agreed that we're just going to pretend to be friends for the next 3 decades?
I was expecting the shooting incident to be what glues them back together after some very traumatic fighting, and so I was really surprised that this happened the way it did. And that's another comment I'll actually say, that the aftermath of the murder relative to the other seasons is easily the shortest in terms of there's very little of other characters reacting to this culminating event.
And
So
especially
yeah.
given how long that final episode was, it was almost feature length. And I would have maybe placed all that action a third in and had at least 2/3 of that for reaction. And I agree. Number one, I didn't buy that Laurie would just be like, I'm so grateful to be part of this group. And then secondly, or maybe I was just disappointed. I wanted more for her. And secondly, I just thought, yeah, that might have come after a moment of catharsis, emotional catharsis and shock. It was weird the way it came. And I think, are we meant to believe that? I mean, all three of them have flirted with Russians the whole time. Are you meant to believe that for Laurie, that kind of experience where she thinks she's finally scored with the hot Russian and then he realizes that he was just after her for money, was that shocking or demeaning enough that she would come crawling back? None of it felt real to me.
Yeah, it didn't quite land. It was just a humorous event. I was expecting, again, maybe people were speculating when she gets into the taxi to go back to the hotel that it was going to start an abduction event, just because people were expecting something of a greater magnitude to affect her. But we really, Oh, those Russians, which are most aligned with this story, they ultimately went nowhere, so that felt like a big waste of screen time.
Yeah, and they were basically, I mean, those are the guys who did the heist on the jewelry store, I think, we're meant to infer,
Yep.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
But why? And why make them, I mean, having Russians these days, that is kind of provocative in a sense, and it just didn't feel anything came of that. I don't know. Yet another loose end. Any more
Yeah,
about the
and it's also like
conspiracy? Sorry.
it is kind of just about like the format of the show, right? Because it's, as you know, maybe Mike White might, like take an issue with describing the show as having a formula, but like
It certainly does.
it's yeah, it certainly does. And as far as the weekly watch goes, it's like you lead or like you start the season in media res, and like with like someone just about to discover the body, right? And then you like you drive the tension about where that's coming from, and that's what makes having like when Jason Isaacs steals the gun, that's what like that's what makes it exciting, even though it's like that turns out to be a nothing burger in the end. And
Mm,
with at least with that group of characters with the gun, but at least like we're but that's building the tension of, oh, the gun's in play now. That's what we heard at the beginning of the first episode, right? So, and it is part of the gimmick to have a lot of red herrings like this. And if one of them, like all these red herrings, I don't know, I'm not the Agatha Christie super fan in the room, right? So it's like what makes a good red herring.
mm,
I like when a red herring becomes a reverse setup, or it plays with your expectations in a different way. But here
Mhm.
it was just, there was no payoff of any kind. So that's why I find it particularly lackluster.
Right. That
mm.
said, as far as just like how it relates to the girls' trip characters, like we don't see Jacqueline's pillow talk with Valentine after they do the deed. So, we don't know whether he tried the same shakedown tactic as Laurie's hookup did.
I
Hmm.
feel like if we had known that, it would have elevated the scene. Are they a group of
Yes.
con men? But yeah, again, it's a scene we didn't see that perhaps we should have. If you're going
Right.
to bother incorporating this group of characters in.
Yeah. Yeah, and like they didn't have to actually show the dialogue. They could have like left or shown him like leaving with something like expensive to pawn or something. I don't know.
Okay. Let's get into maybe the most heartbreaking couple of the show. Rick Hatchett, who is an older guy, evidently with quite a dodgy past. He's deeply resentful of the person who killed his dad. And he's played by Walton Goggins, who's been in loads and loads of things, but never really is the leading man, I feel. And he's just really phenomenal here. Some of his facial acting, particularly against Sam Rockwell, is just a masterclass. And he is dating a much younger girl called Chelsea, played by Amy Lou Wood, who'll be familiar to sex education fans. And she is just incredibly loving and protective of him, very loyal, believes in lots of astrology and stuff that he just finds ridiculous, really wants him to leave behind his past trauma and just move forward. And is absolutely delighted in the final episode when he finally feels like he has and says, look, the idea is for us to be together forever. Then, of course, he sees the man who he thinks kills his father, played by Scott Glenn, which is ridiculous stunt casting. Cannot let it go. We end up with a shoot up, and poor Amy Lou Wood is caught in the crossfire. And they do die together in the shape floating in the water of a yin and yang. And actually, this is the only story where the characters I think will remain with me and where I was really rooting for them and where I genuinely felt the tragedy of their loss or my loss of them. So, thoughts on the wonderful Rick and Chelsea? No thoughts?
I
Okay, we
enjoyed
Michael?
you go, Michael.
uh, I enjoyed, yeah, the conception of these two contrasting characters and how they played off of one another. But I'm also let down. Well, I'm let down because the story took too long. It took far too long to really
Mm,
get going. This feels like something that should have been resolved closer to the middle of the story trajectory, and the aftermath feels very half baked. What caused Rick to exactly have this freak out just from this little interaction he has with his not dad, who's actually his dad, it was very strange. It felt rushed. And then, of course, the fact that his father was not revealed until the very final moment just felt like bad writing, honestly, so that
And
they could
everyone had
avoid the
figured it
Darth
out
Vader.
already. So it's meant to be this big, oh, he is your father. And it's like, yeah, we all knew that like 2 episodes ago. Like, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, it's symptomatic of my frustrations with the entire season. I was
Agree.
actually thinking when looking at some of the commentary that if we know that, oh God, what's Chelsea? Chelsea, that's her name, right?
Yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, yeah. Her little spiel that she says to Saxton is, oh, I found him and he was so wounded, and I want to heal him and make him better. If Rick had come back after going through his little trials and he was a healed person, if that would have led to an interesting new dynamic of they're not contrasting anymore. He's not this person to heal. Does Chelsea lose her interest? Does Chelsea move on to Saxon as her new project to fix? There's a lot
And
of
you
interesting
open
stuff in the
doors. Yeah.
aftermath. And yeah, I just feel like we were deprived of this very interesting story direction.
I agree. It's so awful that they did the full climax right at the end for that reason. Steph, thoughts on this little couple?
Yeah, so I mostly just found her annoying. I liked your idea about her losing interest in Rick once he was quote unquote healed, though, Michael. Yeah, I think they could have done without the excursion to the snake show. I think if they had just cut some of that out, it would have been it would have been less annoying, and it would have felt like less of a like they were less treading water in the middle.
Mm,
And yeah, there is an interesting aspect of just different ideas of what karma actually means when Rick's character goes to the therapist. And so like after like when she says that like you can like escape your karma, it's more about like or it seems like she's talking about it more as in like your circumstances
mm,
and yeah, with like destructive patterns, but it seems more like, especially since after he told her his life story, it's like that was more that she was referring to. But the yeah, and like the little the ruse section with Sritala and his hitman buddy. That was amusing, but it was a little too straining credulity that, like they didn't do any sort of prep even after the first time when Rick was just posing as the producer to get the invitation to their house. That, he like she asked him, which films of mine did you see?
I mean, that was like, I mean, I flipping love Sam Rockwell. I have always crushed on Sam Rockwell. I think he's hilarious. I think his scene with Walt Goggin, where he does the big monologue about,
His
how
fantasies.
his fantasies and sexual explorations in Thailand, and just Walton Goggins' like facial reactions to that are just so
Yes.
brilliant and well calibrated. To me, that's the highlight of the season. I mean, that is just like the funniest 15 minutes of TV you can watch in a long time. But I was like, so we're meant to believe these are like serious criminals, right? They know where to get money. They know where to get guns. We understand that these are efficient, successful, professional criminals, and yet they would be so ridiculously like incompetent in trying to case that joint. I was just like, no, now you've just broken my credulity. We needed to see them flip that switch and actually be convincing when they went to the house of the hotel owner, Stritala.
Right.
So
And that was the
Yeah,
episode
yeah.
titled Killer Instinct, right? Like they could have like, displayed some of that maybe.
yeah, indeed, indeed. Yeah, so I don't
It's
know. I
just
just
low
feel
effort comedy, which I feel is above that. If you wanted to do the con man slowly getting caught out on lies, you can do that to a more sophisticated degree. Maybe he says movie A when he meant to say movie B, and that makes Sritala jealous or something. But to just have no idea what they're talking about, honestly,
mm,
I had to skip through those scenes. I was like, oh God, this is not fun.
I
Yeah.
agree. Anything
Yeah,
more to say about those three? Oh, sorry.
I did like the part at the end when Sam Rockwell was watching Sri Tala's old movies with her. It's like, that's you, seriously? It's like but that
Yeah,
gives the whole game away too if you actually like stop and think about it. So
indeed,
it is
indeed.
the prestige show problem of like I'm entertained in the moment, but if I stop and think about it, it falls apart,
I don't know, even in the
which happens a
moment.
lot in these shows.
Okay, so let's then move maybe to some of the hotel staff. And I'm going to leave the obvious to the end. So we've got Sritala, the sort of the hotel owner, who is very glamorous, I have to say. in real life, and just very, very beautiful. Obviously, was something we're meant to think is somehow dodgy in her past. Played by someone called Lek Patravadi, who is known as the Thai Judi Dench. So apparently, a very accomplished actress. And then she is obviously dating or partnered up with Walton Goggins or Rick's dad. But I mean, what are the chances of that? That also kind of slightly annoyed me, that kind of coincidence. Any thoughts on her and the partner?
I love her whole grand dame energy. So
Exactly. Definitely aging goals right there. And then we have, I thought this was really wasted. Apart from all the Russians, we also had the general manager of the hotel called Fabian, whose whole plot line seems to be that he wants to sing. And he's played by Christian Friedel, who was astonishingly good as Rudolf Hess in The Zone of Interest, but has also starred in Babylon Berlin. He was in Michael Haneke's The White Ribbon. I don't understand why you cast someone that good and give him so little to do. I was just desperately disappointed for him.
It is a very strange situation. Even his singing moment, which is very much hyped up, ends up not even being a proper scene. It's just a cutaway. It makes me
Mm,
think, is there a whole selection of deleted scenes for this character?
yeah. I think he's done dirty in the
It's
edit or in the writing or something, but I feel that's very sad to pick someone that good and not give them more to do. And then we have a whole bunch of sort of Thai characters who I feel are really like Mike White just didn't look interested in them, so they don't have much to do. So I guess the two main ones are Mook, who's a very pretty woman who works in the spa and the hotel as one of the dancers sometimes. And there's a security guard who really, fancies her, asks her awkwardly out on a date. His name's Gaytok, played by Tame Thapthimthong. So apologies if I pronounced that wrong. And she basically isn't that interested because he's the nice guy, right? He's just like a really earnest, lovely guy. But as soon as he's involved in a shootout and then gets promoted to being like the security for the hotel owner and has cool glasses and a cool car, then she wants to be with him. And I was like, okay, so you're making some like really like Captain Obvious point that, nice guys come last and girls want the cool rich guy. But it just felt very kind of like, you're really not interested in any of these Thai characters at all, are you, Mr. Showrunner?
it's interesting to note that when season one came out, there was criticism that the Hawaiian characters had this very narrow focus. They were in like one or two episodes, and then they vanished immediately once they were no longer relevant to the plot.
Mm.
But of course, in season two, you had some very interesting locals and hotel
Yeah.
staff characters. And now that we're back to, let's say, people of color that are the hosts, or the locals, we're back to it's something that I couldn't not notice. These very bland, uninteresting characters. This easily wins the prize for the most boring, repetitive storyline that ultimately didn't mean much or lead anywhere.
Agree. I mean, like if they go back to a European destination next year and there's really good local characters, then I think, that's a red flag that Mike White has a problem, or at the very least a blind spot with writing
yeah, I
people of
mean,
color.
I was rather glad that this season's hotel manager wasn't a gay person engaging in quid pro quo sexual harassment, but still.
Yeah.
But
Although it'd be
but
interesting to know how the LGBTQIA community greet that Sam Rockwell monologue. Because, I mean, I don't know. Is that problematic?
I think most people would have just interpret that of like him being some sort of like queer but doesn't identify with and there was that like I think there was that section when like after the ruse and like he went to relapse at the hotel and go on a bender that
Mm,
like he was trying to get Walter Goggins to stay, but then I think part of Walter Goggins calculus was like, oh, I'm the only white guy in the room. He's just unloaded
yeah.
about to me about all of his fantasies involving someone like me. So
Mm. Yeah, it's all very, I don't know. The whole thing's unsatisfying. So if we're not spending lots of time with the Thai characters, it's not because we don't care, it's because I think the show doesn't care.
And
Um,
I as far as Guy Talk character, like, yeah, there was that, cut at the end that was like making or like trying to fake us out a little bit that it was Guy Talk at the temple seeking repentance afterwards,
mm,
but it was actually the Sam Rockwell character.
yeah, yeah, which is kind of cool in a way.
It's a bit disappointing that you go to Thailand and you don't really properly interrogate, say, the sex tourism industry, lady
Exactly.
boys, a lot of obvious stuff that you'd think Mike White would be all over, but it really is just, yeah, not explored.
Yeah, you would
No.
have expected, like, like, especially since Saxon comes off the plane talking about how horny he is, that, like, it wouldn't be about he wouldn't be really trying to score with, like white people who are also tourists or expats, but also, I mean, that in isolation gives itself, like, an interesting depth to him, also with the fact that, like, he's like, I don't do drugs, but,
I wonder
after
if
being told
in a
about it.
way, if you were to be in defense of Mike White, maybe he felt he had two main characters who were prostitutes last season, so it feels a bit like if we're doing that exploration again. But then you're setting it in Thailand, dude. So I don't know.
But
Maybe
also,
he feels that the Charlotte Le Bon character, Chloe, is kind of a sex worker. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, she's definitely like a kept woman, and
Hmm. And the
the
Russians, in a way, right? Like shaking down Laurie
yeah,
for money.
yeah, and also, you could also say that, like, Mook could just find herself a loser back home and attach
Yeah.
herself to him, but she is allowing Guy Talk to court her. So, and she's just like, she isn't wrong, but this is something that might be required.
Hmm.
To and yeah, she is kind of like nudging him to have more ambition. I guess my own question is, she kind of applying that standard to herself, and she is putting herself out there by like being or by like dancing for the hotel evening entertainment, so it's not like she's doing nothing that's kind of like above the exact specifications of her job, but
Hmm.
yeah,
She just feels like a character in service to another character. There's no
yeah.
real agency, no independence. And again, the celebrity casting is something you can't ignore. Was she deliberately, was it in her contract, I can't be doing anything crazy or risque? Yeah. Why have the character, honestly?
Yeah.
Hmm. I agree. Okay, so that probably brings us to our final significant grouping, which is Belinda, the spa therapist from season one, who Jennifer Coolidge's character, who's super rich, was kind of dangling a dream in front of her of funding the opening of her own spa. And then obviously that character just meets her dream man, Greg, and then forgets all about the spa therapist, Belinda. We know obviously what happened to that character, the rich character in season two. So in season three, Belinda, the spa therapist, is on an exchange program. So she's gone to the Thai White Lotus to learn their spa techniques and teach them hers in reverse, and has a lovely little brief affair with one of her fellow spa therapists. And all seems to be going really well until she realizes that Greg, now self renamed, is on a very, very flashy super yacht with a very young, hot girlfriend, Chloe, played another Nepo baby in his cast, played by Charlotte Le Bon, daughter of Duran Duran singer Simon Le Bon. And she decides that she wants justice for her purported friend. And he attempts to buy her off for $100,000. And I think Belinda would not have accepted this, but realizes that she's in danger. She's really worried something's going to happen to her. And then her son turns up, who's this kind of, shouty dude bro, kind of just done an MBA. I know how to negotiate. The art of the deal, mum, leave it to me. He asks for multi millions and gets them. The money is deposited in the account. I think the whole time the viewer is meant to wonder, is Belinda and now the son Zion going to get shot? But they're not. They just go off into the distance, very happy and very rich. And of course, if the message of this season is that innocence cannot survive and is corrupted, then we see Belinda basically take the money and run. So much for nice lady Belinda. Any thoughts on this little subplot?
How are they going to explain that $5 million to the IRS?
I know. As soon as that went into their actual account, I was like, "Do you not like set up a Swiss bank account and do it that?" way.
Right, and it's just like, like that, like it wouldn't even hit the account overnight. There'd just be like a million red flags, a million like holds for like so long until they figure out that that's legit, right?
Yeah, and we'll at least like tell them that they're going to get Bitcoin or something, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
very
was like,
symptomatic of what I regard as poor storytelling. I feel like this was dragged across so many episodes with very little progression. And I
mm,
really feel that that the finale was messed up and not set up properly. So obviously you have that scene where they set her up with Pawnchai, who she's getting along with. There's some romantic tension. She's like, "Oh, I maybe wanted to have a spa one day," and he's like, "Oh, I also wanted to do that." And then, of course, for that final scene, they have Belinda say to Pawnchai almost the exact words that Tanya said to
hmm
Belinda, because they're clearly going, we all know what they're going for, their innocence corrupted. But I feel like the
yeah.
context here is radically different, and they did not
Hmm.
set this up in at all in a satisfactory manner. Yeah, what do you guys think of this scene?
No, I agree with you. It's a difference of degree as far as Belinda and Pornchai goes, as compared to Belinda and Tanya in season one. That like it's like they'd known each other for like a week. Yes, they slept together. But like there wasn't like Belinda did not string Pornchai along like Tanya did for Belinda, where
Mm,
like she just went to did the legwork of developing the business plan and of like Tanya really like dangling that for her attention and to move her schedule around. And that just and like setting up a business with in both scenarios, yes, setting up a business with someone you just met within a week is a very big risk, and to do that in a foreign country is an even bigger risk. And that like it is like going to be meaningful if she ever shows up in another season about her just saying that to Pornchai. And like maybe my opinion will change if they bring the actress back after the or for a new season. But
I get the impression they were trying to establish that in the 12 hours that she had had this money, she had been corrupted and she was no longer even going to start a spa or anything. She was just taking the money and going to run to be a rich woman for the rest of her days. But in that
right,
case, why not just take Pornchai with you? Like, they seem to really
right.
establish that they were getting along great. They had a spark. He was a nice, sensitive guy. You can do that. You've got $5 million in unembezzled money. But yeah, so this really fell apart for me. The real nail in the coffin is then when they are on that smaller boat going away, and they're doing the little waving shot with that sad pawn shy. But like, why would they be giving a waving ceremony for an employee that just broke the contract of this exchange stay? Nothing about it makes sense. It's manipulative filmmaking, and I hate it.
Yeah,
mm.
and like with the other Thai characters, Pornchai did come across as rather flat, and I think they were going for like mature and just uncomplicated, but it's still uninteresting. And just like it like with the context of the other local characters, it was disappointing.
Yeah. Okay. I must also correct myself because although I said that Charlotte Le Bon was the son of Simon Le Bon, she isn't. She is an Epo baby, but of Quebecois actors. So not Duran Duran progeny. Is there anything you'd like to say about anything in this series or indeed season?
In the lead up to this podcast, I just went back and watched some episodes of season one and two, and
Oh,
particularly for two, what I was really struck by was dynamic camera shots showing energy through the scenes,
yeah.
whether it's the characters on jet skis or they're going around on a Vespa or they're walking around town using the art of cinematography and cameras and all that sort of stuff that even an amateur like me can understand. And I really saw a lack of this in season three, and it makes me wonder: did Mike White like fire his whole camera crew, his director of photography? We know there was a little tiff with the musician who will not be
Composer,
returning
yes.
for future seasons. So it does make me wonder what sort of behind the scenes drama that's been hinted at slightly was going on for this shoot.
I agree. It felt like fun season 2, even though so much of it was dark. It felt like those characters were so glamorous and having so much fun. To the point where my husband and I actually went and stayed in that resort in Taormina thereafter. And it was just full of
It looked
Americans and Brits.
beautiful.
It's just stunning. It's gorgeous. It's now obviously double the price of what it was before. But it is fun and gorgeous and lovely. Like it doesn't lie. Like it's worth going. I would highly recommend. Whereas this one just felt so static and dark and dingy and slow and just obvious and heavy-handed. I think it's why I clung on to that Rockwell appearance. It's like, oh, finally some fun. And I kind of felt like we'd crawled through it to the end. I didn't like the resolutions. And I was just like, I don't know. That just felt like a waste of time. Really, honestly, I feel like it's 10 hours of my life I won't get back. And I'm like borderline irritated by that. Nonetheless, I will, of course, watch season 4.
Yeah, I'm interested what they do next.
I think they have to shake the structure. They can't just do another we go to a glamorous resort, someone's dead in the opening scenes and we work back towards it. They have to, and we're just like, let's satirize rich people while also being slightly parochial and uninterested in foreigners like rich people. I think they've got to do something different. I don't know, maybe Mike White's just paid too much now and has gotten lazy.
It would be interesting to see one of the Ratliff children, either the daughter or the younger son, working at the next one.
Mm. Oh, working
If
out. I
they
wonder
do
if
lose
they're a US
everything.
resort. Yeah.
Right. If they stay in the US and they lose everything. Didn't Mike White say he's not doing a tropical shoot again because of how long this one took, because of the heat and the light
Mm.
and how it would rain, just because it's so humid, there would be like a daily rain shower, right? So
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. And apparently the next one is at a vegan resort. I think of the Ratcliffe children, be most interested to see Saxon because I felt he had the most capacity for sort of he had probably the best arc of any character in White Lotus this season, I feel.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd love to see him again. Plus I think Patrick Schwarzenegger's quite an interesting young actor. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether we get Greg again. And it's not entirely clear to me that Belinda's out of danger either. Who do you think's coming back, Michael?
Ooh, good question. Good question. Who has the greatest capacity for growth and to be seen? No one from season 2 that I can really imagine. Who else was in season 1 that did interesting stuff? I would actually, yeah, prefer. I felt that the character of Greg was just a little too static and bland
Mm,
in actually all of his appearances. Maybe season 1 he was a little different, but again he feels like plot device to get things going rather than
yeah, totally.
genuine interest.
And why is he with
It is
Charlotte Le Bon? Why is he with Chloe? Because wasn't the point from season 2 that actually he had a lover and that he was actually gay but exploiting Tanya?
I don't believe that. I thought he was just exploiting Tom Hollander.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. The dashing
That he
cowboy.
was, yeah, that he's just like, just like he knows how to manipulate a lonely gay person.
Okay,
And that,
fair enough.
yeah, just like because there's a small dating pool when you're gay, that like and you're used to pining for someone who's unavailable, that makes you a very easy mark for that kind of thing.
Mm.
throw in some financial incentives and hey, they'll murder for you.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, I suppose at least in a way, the murder this time was for earnest reasons of family, like Inigo Montoya family revenge rather than money.
And it wasn't an accident. That's also what's different, I
Yeah, because the
suppose.
first 2 seasons have been accidents, right? And these were proper murders.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you could say that the circumstances of Tanya's accidental death are extremely suspicious, and it's worth speculating about to the point where, Greg is wanted for questioning, and that would definitely bring negative publicity to the hotel. But yeah, it was a little, yeah, at least this is
hmm.
intentional.
Agree, agree. Oh well, I feel like I'm furiously agreeing with both of you, and we've talked our way around this being a sort of 3.5 star season of quite tedious and poorly written TV, but with occasional flashes of interest.
I
Okay.
hope they do better
Well,
next time. Better luck
yeah,
next
do
time,
better,
that's what I
Mike
have to
White.
say.
You owe us. This is very
Yeah,
in
no,
keeping with us being George R. R. Martin fans, right? Do better, writers. You owe us.
yeah,
We
I
know
mean,
you've got it in you. You can do it.
Yeah,
yeah, I'd watch the
exactly.
next season, but I think after that, if things don't improve, I'm good.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, not even the whole of the next season. If by the first sort of 2, 3 episodes it's not gripping me, I'm tapping out. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you. And listeners, I'm not sure what the next VOC will be on. I still have to finish Agatha Christie reread. I've got one episode left to record, so maybe I'll get that done. Hopefully, we'll have some more Jane Austen goodness coming your way. And in the meantime, I hope you really enjoy whatever you're watching and reading and loving. Join us on the Vassals of Kingsgrave Discord server to chat more. You can find a link to that. If you go to our YouTube channel, there's a link to get you there. And have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Bye.